Welcome to Things That Matter, featuring Farm to Market, caring for kids, and age-reversing health. It's all coming right up on Things That Matter. Now, please welcome your host, Carl Krebs.
Well, it's Thursday. Guess what? It's time for Things That Matter. Welcome. My name is Carl Krebs. I'm your host, along with my guest tonight. We hope we're going to make an impact in your life. Tonight is September the 12th, and we've got our regular show lineup. We start off with our 30-minute segment of Farm to Market with Harry Siemens, veteran ag reporter. And he's talking about all the things that are happening that could have the impact on the price of food that we pay in the market, something that I think matters to you. Our second segment is Caring for Kids. Tonight is a very personal subject to me, talking about a particular adoption that is taking place in Manitoba right now. And I'm going to weigh in on it and give some background without disclosing too much because it's very personal. But you're going to really, I think, get a good sense of what's happening with adoptions in Manitoba. Our third segment, Age Reversing Health, features my co-host, Judy Friesen, 38-year veteran health coach. She's talking about something called peptides, copper peptides that are directly associated with age reversal. Folks, it's a good show. I hope you're going to be able to stay with us for the full 90 minutes. Before we jump into it, here's a word from LifeWave.
Imagine having no pain, sleeping through the night, having more energy, and reversing the aging process. Now imagine LifeWave doing that all naturally, without the use of harmful drugs. X39 is the most advanced patented light therapy in the world. LightWave is a simple wearable patch that you place on your body that stimulates the body to regenerate and heal itself. With more than 20 years of research and over 100 patents, LifeWave specializes in age-reversing all-natural health. Find out what the power of the patch can do for you. For more information or to join our LifeWave community, go to thingsthatmatter.ca/LifeWave. LifeWave, reversing the aging process naturally without the use of harmful drugs.
Well, just before we get to Harry Siemens, I want to take just a couple of minutes and talk about some other things that matter, that things that are happening today. And this is a new segment because I want to certainly identify many other things that matter too. So tonight, what do I want to talk about? Bill Gates, the somehow expert on all things health related, made a statement in an interview the other day, and he said he was still disappointed with how America has responded and things that they might not have learned from COVID-19. You know, I don't know why they keep putting a mic in front of his mouth, but every time they do, he shows just a little bit more of the sinister character that he is. And he believes that there will be another pandemic, another panic, another plandemic within the next 30 years. And like the weather, he's forecasting it to be worse than what they perpetrated upon us with COVID-19. Folks, you know, when he was building the Microsoft industry, the empire that he built that made him a $157 billion person, he was often investigated for antitrust laws in building a company that dominated the industry. Bill Gates is the biggest owner of private land in the United States. Doesn't seem that anybody is giving a damn about Bill Gates owning that much land and then having as much authority that he has to talk about planned pandemics, planned, manufactured, if I have to say it, I'll say it, crises that are perpetrated upon people. Folks, these are also things that matter. But right now, without further ado, here is Farm to Market. Take a listen to this, and we're going to roll with Harry Siemens right after it.
Welcome to Farm to Market, featuring an in-depth look at how the Canadian ag industry and Canadian farmers alike are faced with a variety of challenges in an ever-changing liberal Canadian agricultural landscape. Now here's your hosts, Carl Krebs and Harry Siemens.
Well, welcome back. And here we are with Farm to Market with my veteran ag reporter and good friend, Harry Siemens. Harry, welcome to the studio. What have you got on the agenda tonight? We left off last week with the canola crisis as China is flexing its muscles and showing Canada, you want to mess with the EVs that we send there? We're going to look into anti-dumping on canola that enters our country. Harry, what's happening on that scene? Let's just start with that, maybe, if we could, please.
Well, on September 3rd, China's Ministry of Commerce announced it will initiate anti-dumping. Well, then fast forward, September 9, they formally announced its notice of initiation of an anti-dumping investigation into imports of Canadian canola seed. And so we're not sure where this is going to go. You know, it's got weeks, has months, maybe years to where it really becomes effective. But what is happening right now, and I just got off the phone with a farmer, Rob Stone from Saskatchewan, and Rob is a canola grower, and he had been on Twitter a fair bit. And so I asked him, I says, what's really going to happen? And in his case, it was already happening. He said, canola, you know, first of all, the yield is a bit less than what they had anticipated, than what it had actually looked like. And that's part of the crop report because, you know, the stand is there, but the hot weather in July, the third week, cut back. And so, number one, he says, $2 a bushel less because of China right now. And that's already taking him below the cost of production. Secondly, he says we're going to really have to wonder, what will we do for next year? You know, it costs money to grow canola. And if you can't make any money in return because of those kinds of things, then, you know, but he said he figures that for the most part, farmers will probably go with a little less. We'll see what happens next year when we've got spring. But right now, it's a situation that not only has canola growers concerned, as we've talked on this show before, it also has all the other agricultural industries wondering what is going to happen, even to the south of us. You know, the canola industry started right here in Manitoba. It used to be rapeseed, but then it changed to canola. And so in the United States, they started to grow it after us. But even the Association of Canola Growers of America, they are concerned because the canola price is, you know, it can do a lot of things when you have a country like China stepping into it. And so, you know what, we're going to have to just wait and see. But for now, it's already brought the price down. Yes, it's come back up. But this variability and not knowing, like what he said, we were already at a point where the price of canola had come down a lot. And now this brings it down to below the cost of production. That's not a good thing.
The concern I'm thinking about here is, where is all this canola going to be stored as it's taken from the fields? Because this is the largest single cash crop that producers put in the ground, if not in the whole country, certainly Western Canada. And it has to come off. It can't be left on the field. Is there any word coming back from producers? Where are they going to stockpile the extra canola? Because it's not leaving the ports going to China right now.
Well, you know, some of it is, but at the same time, farmers do have lots of storage, and canola, because the price was down, I'm sure a lot of farmers had made sure they had the storage on farm. But you know what? Canola you have to store it right. You can have canola go rotten on you very quickly if you've got any kind of moisture. So all of those things play into part. I've been trying to figure out, is there stuff backing up as far as canola as stock is concerned? Not really, because the farmers are just nicely getting into the canola harvest. So we'll have to wait and see how many of the farmers are going to, sell it at whatever price, and if there's companies that will take it. But all of that has to work its way through the system. But the initial reaction, the price of canola has come down even when the price of soybeans was going up. And very often canola is on the tail of soybeans. But at the same time, we'll wait and see. I really
it is early in this battle of tit for tat, as they call it. I know you've watched these trade disputes in the past. It's not that long ago when we can go back and find another one and how it ended and the impact. But what I want to draw our viewers to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Harry, is the imminent threat to the producer as he continues to have to operate in an unstable market, unknown, not knowing where his prices are going. His costs of operations continue to be at record high. And now you see, as you said, this is supply and demand. It always has been. The supply is high, the demand is low, the price is dropping. I think in the back of my mind, I have the music in the background playing is producers are feeling under threat. And when we don't have producers, our food supply is going to definitely be impinged on. It's going to be compromised. And in the end, consumers, you and I and everybody else is paying the price in the market. But we're going to have to see, I guess, on that one.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But, in the whole carbon tax thing, which is going to go up, and I remember talking to Gilbert Sabrin, a producer at St. Jean, when I asked him about that original carbon tax, and he says, if they start upping that and they start bringing down the amount of fertilizer that emissions that we can actually use, he says, farmers like us, and I think he said something about 2,800 acre farm. He says, we just can't. We need to make money on production. We can't just make money on price. It's got to be on production. Excuse me. And so at this point, we just have to make sure, and we have a lot of younger farmers that are, in succession, in farms that would like to get in. But something, before the agriculture segment from the University of Manitoba, the ag degrees, the ag diploma people, well, they got all these jobs at these supplying companies that are supplying product to farmers. Yes, we can talk about the high input costs, but at the same time, if farmers aren't growing, they're not going to get money for their high input costs either.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, you've got a number of things on your agenda tonight. Where do you want to go from here? Do you want to give a quick crop update, or do you want to move into the situation with abattoirs in England? Where do you want to go, Harry?
I'll just briefly just say that as far as the crop is concerned, we've got great weather right now, with this 27, 28, 30 degree weather that we've had for the last week has been awesome as far as taking off the crop. Because before that, especially in southern Manitoba, we had high humidity, and it was, it wasn't quite as easy to take that crop off. But at the same time, now we've got just about, I would say, ideal conditions as far as harvesting is concerned. So let's, my hat's off to all those farmers and farm workers that are still bringing in that food. And I call them food producers because that's exactly what they are.
Yeah, Harry, I had the privilege of a nice ride last night as I headed south from Fort McMurray, delivering some heavy equipment up there, and I saw the combines running late at night. It's so cool when you see those lights out in the field, and it's 11, it's 12 o'clock, and those guys are still growing strong, just trying to take advantage of all that good weather.
Absolutely.
It reminds me of being a prairie kid.
Well, I've been there. I've been on that combine at 12 o'clock at night waiting for my father to come and say, Harry, I think we can maybe stop for a few hours. But you know what? In some of these, like a fall like this, I remember some falls where you could drive 24/7. And then, of course, there were the other falls like we had just a couple of weeks ago where, once that sun started to settle down, the dew started to play and it became tough. And so, you're absolutely right. But, I love agriculture, but I'm glad I'm not out there doing the combining.
Yeah, exactly. It was a life in the past, and we're going to leave it there. We're not going to resurrect that, right?
No, you're absolutely right. Don't ever call
Hey, I
me.
want to. Yeah, I want to move into the situation that I got some information on, and you were on it as well. The situation with abattoirs in the United Kingdom. This is a big deal that's not getting any airtime anywhere that I know of. You've done some digging into it. Explain to our audience, of course, the importance of having abattoirs in the business and what they do for the cattle and the pork industry.
It's almost like which comes first, the egg or the chicken in this particular one, right? I mean, you
Mhm.
need abattoirs to process the animals, but at the same time, you won't have any abattoirs if the animals aren't there to process. So it's a come see, come saw if you want at that particular point, but it's absolutely important. And I have my good friend Dr. John Carr, who's a veterinarian consultant feeding pigs in 9 countries of the world. And he
Is
comes
that
from,
a book? Hang on. Is that a book? Feeding pigs in 9 countries in the world. Sounds like a book with a sequel.
you know what? I had dinner with him just a couple of weeks ago in Winnipeg, but he's back in Australia, but he comes from England. So when I sent him that, I says, what's going on? Well, he says, it's interesting. When I started to love pigs, I was 11 years old. And that's when he started to think already about looking after pigs. He says, then the UK was the king as far as pig production. He says, in my lifetime, and he's now 65 years old, I'm going to see the UK pig industry go from powerhouse to hobby farm. And he doesn't say these things lightly. But then I asked him, I said, how come? Well, number one, he says, aging farmers. Number two, loss of the sow stall in 1999, the banning of sow stalls at that particular time, and he called it a stupid move. But that took producers out. And then a lack of investment. When you don't have a good forward-looking situation, who's going to invest? Even in Western Canada, I don't think, and I remember doing the interview, that we've really seen a return on investment in the last 50 years on the pig facilities. So lack of investment. And you know what? It costs here in Manitoba. You're lucky if you can build a new hog barn for under $5 million. I mean, so it takes investment and it takes, some confidence in the industry. The other thing he
But
said,
when you talk about the investment, Harry, we need to just park there just for a minute and say, invest in what? Invest in a world ideology that has demonized the animals that we've come to depend on to feed ourselves. For those of us that are self-declared carnivores, they're demonizing all that was once a cherished, valuable, a value-added sector of our GDP. And then you say, you're not saying it, but take a look at those costs. $5 million. What's the ROI on that? How long is that going to take to pay itself off? That is a recipe for disaster. You're going to spend yourself into bankruptcy before you start to see any real return, Harry.
yeah, you're absolutely right. And so we've got people in the industry and the pig industry came up with the code of practice, like how do we handle animals? Why? Because they had consumer activists that are telling people, you know what, don't buy this if the animals aren't treated well. And so that takes me to the next point that Dr. John Carr had. He says the growth of outdoor herds, in the UK, that's another reason for dropping. It's one thing to have a facility where you can look after those animals. Now there's the sentiment that we need to grow the herds outside in the backyard. Well, that again, while this growth of outdoor pig herds may seem like a win for animal welfare, the reality is that it's often driven by economic factors. And so, you're not going to spend $5 million on a barn you can't afford and pay back. So what do? So that's really help. And then urban expansion, he says, as towns and cities expands, farms are being pushed out or taken over, and that's happening in various countries of around, and so that's another situation.
Well, and in various forms too, Harry. We did a special program a few weeks ago on the WMR and the 2050 agenda that threatens farmers. So farmers are long-term players. They are not playing the short game. They're always playing the long game when it comes to their industry. And they look at it and they're looking at it with what the confidence to invest, because you look at the factors and the power and the money that they have that they're facing as an imminent threat. I don't know how to how to encourage a farmer these days. How do you encourage a farmer these days? Sounds like the beginning of a joke, but it's not.
You're absolutely right. And so, we have the Farm Credit Corporation, we have the banks and a few of the credit unions, but at the same time, you're absolutely right. And then the only way that we now see a younger farmer taking over is taken over from dad, who's done the succession planning over the last 20 years with that exact thing intent. And those numbers are declining. One other thing I just wanted to say, John said it's the declining interest from youth. Nobody wants to feed pigs. We see this even, and I'm not saying this as a downer or a negative, but we're seeing this even happening with the Hutterite colonies, where in Alberta and some places, the barns are empty. Why? Nobody wants to go into the pig barn, and feed pigs. And I shouldn't say nobody, but fewer and fewer people. Also, government indifference. You mentioned the government's lack of interest in defending pig farming. Well, yeah, that's what happens. So you're left out there. So somebody comes after you, and the government says, "Oh, okay, we'll just hang in there." And so now the farmer is again left to defend for him or herself, and that's becoming really difficult. And you see that here in Canada. Even with the canola thing. There's a lot of people, they're not saying it out as loud as you and I are saying it, but why isn't the government in Ottawa on top of this and to make sure, and somebody says, well, it's a few votes in Ontario because of the EV battery plant, but at the same time, it's a far bigger issue. They should be, standing there front and center.
Well, I shared this with you off camera. I think it speaks to lack of planning. There's no forward thinking in this government. It's all crisis management. They're looking at everything in the short term. The only thing they're prepared to talk about long term is environmental impact, environmental issues, the World Health Organization, the WEF, and everything else that comes down from lofty towers grandeur that is not based in reality, that has a terrific impact, a negative impact into the world that we live. These people live in a world that is synthetic. It is foreign. It is only known to them. And because of the immense power and wealth, they're never going to have to live out the reality of things that they want to implement. And I believe that young farmers are smart enough to say, I'm watching dad. Boy, he's carrying a load of stress there. You look at the Hutterites and the kids say, what are we doing this for? What is it? Where's the future in this? Everything we're hearing is against us. They're plotting against us. So you really drive a negative sentiment into the hearts of farmers and the ones that are yet to come, because farming is a business where it's passed on. As you said, succession planning is a real part. I think the only way it's happening is when the old farmers are making all kinds of concessions to keep their kids there, so that this all doesn't just end at his generation.
Yeah, and all of that, reflects back to what the cost of food is all about. And not only that, we're seeing as the food professor told us through a survey by Stats Canada, we're seeing population increase, but we've seen a 15 to 20% drop in spending money on real food. What are they buying? And we could get into that, but at the same time, there's a real challenge there as well. But I want to just touch on, on the cattle market a little bit.
Yes.
In the United States, we're at a 60-year low as far as cattle numbers are concerned. Secondly, here in Manitoba, I mean, I remember, we had BSE, that was mad cow disease back in 2003. And from that
Hmm.
standpoint, it took, almost till 2000 and, well, we're 2024, maybe 2018, 2019, where we actually saw the cattle industry in Western Canada having to be back where uh, we maybe were even at that time. Things had changed, but the numbers of cattle producers dropped. The number of cattle in Western Canada has dropped. But right now, we're seeing almost record prices for livestock. And I think I told you off camera, Tom Tykrop, who's the cattle producer at Langruth, and I respect him tremendously in the work he does and the numbers he gives. And so yeah, we're seeing cattle prices. I'm just looking at some right now. Alberta fed steer today forecast 240 a hundredweight. 2023, the average was about 225. 5-year average 165.
Boy,
That
those are big numbers, big
yeah,
increases.
you bet, some increase. So he talked about the $2,500 for a steer, but at the same time, 500 pounds is what they wean them at, and so nobody in their right mind is going to get into the cattle industry right now. Why? Because they can grow wheat. They can turn those pastures into something else than cattle, because the cattle market right now, guys are getting out because the price is so high. Tom is one of the few. He's got right now 320, 330 head of cattle. He maybe wants to take that to 400, but he says it's really going against the grain. But I know that if anybody can do it, he'll do it. And so we'll wait and see, 2 years down the road, where is he going to be at with his cows? And so it's the same story, and we want to eat steak. We want to eat pork. We want to eat poultry. Well, and so we're facing that challenge, and all of those prices, the product is still good, but fewer people are buying them.
Yeah, I understand that. Well, just listening to it, and we don't want to be doom and gloom. I mean, we're here to just give a little bit of understanding so that people can make sense of why, when they go pick up a pack of meat or anything else for that matter, why is there such a stark uptick in the price that we're paying? Well, the odds are against the producer. This is what it's coming down to, and the incentives aren't there. I mean, I haul very expensive farm equipment, and we continue to bring it across the border. There's so much farm equipment coming into Canada. And so I kind of wrestle in my mind, how is it that it is this tough, but we're hauling, combines that are worth, $1.8 million? I brought up a header. Imagine, like, this guy, I had a farmer stop me in North Dakota, and he says, wow, I didn't know necessarily what he meant. He says that is the biggest. It was a header that was 53 feet long. It stretched from the very end of my trailer to the very front. He said, man, I remember when we thought 20-foot headers were big. 53 foot as a single piece of equipment going on the front end of a combine. Wow. $150,000 implement right there.
Well, we got fewer.
But again, Harry, that's the cost going in. What is he going to do? He needs that equipment. How does he pay for it? Lord knows, I don't know. A great bank line, a good banker that's playing with you and saying, yeah, we're going to go a little further with you. But I mean, the equipment does break down. It has to be replaced. So these are the prices he's having to pay, just like any one of us when our equipment breaks down.
Well, and so often is the case. When you're planting, you only have so much time. When you're harvesting, you only have so much time. So if you're going to be sitting repairing, your crop doesn't either go in or doesn't come off. And the numbers of people that are there, and the farms have become so much larger. I mean, my dad had a huge farm in 1960 at 1,200 acres, but we used little pieces of toy tractors and toy cultivators just about.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that particular farm in many people's minds needs to be 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20, whatever 1,000. And if you're going to do that, you're going to have the equipment. And the implement companies know exactly. They want to get steel out there. So I think a lot of farmers lease and they don't buy it outright. So yeah, it's interesting when I would see what's going on over the 53 years before that. I farmed with Dad, so I can remember back to the early 1950s when Dad was farming at that point, and when I started to help. So things have really changed, but at the same time, we're still feeding the world.
Yeah, yeah. So we got a couple of minutes left here, Harry. Going forward, we're going to continue to play. We're going to keep watch over this cat and mouse game with the canola producers as this continues to play out. Anything else that you can share with us that's on the horizon that you're paying some attention to that you're going to bring to us?
Well, I will keep watching what's going on. I watch the hog industry, as well across Western Canada. I write for the Prairie Hog Country. So we're getting into the meetings. Will China do something on pigs or meat and so forth? So that's really, I think, what at this point we're going to be watching. You know what? I think the other positive thing is the whole aspect of technology. We can talk about the negatives in the markets and the land and all that, but the technology that farmers use, I think we should do probably a special half show on that one sometime, because people have no idea how the technology is helping farmers do what they're doing, looking after the environment, looking after the soil, looking after the animals, and looking after themselves. So that's something I think we need to look at in a future show, because that to me is exciting. The technology has surpassed me, but I can still talk to people and ask them what it is they're actually doing. But you know what? I hope people that are watching, continue to eat the food that's produced by the farmers, and the farmers that are producing it. My hat's off to them, and the good Lord will continue to look after us. And that Siemens says.
Well, Harry, thanks. It's always a pleasure to have you. And I'm going to take you up on that offer that we do a segment on the technology, because I think people will be blown away to see how technologically advanced the average farmer is today. Harry, as always, we're going to see you here next week. Thanks so much for being with us.
Take care.